Hello, in Soccer We Trust YouTube fam. We're a little disappointed over here because we didn't score against Saudi Arabia, and that hurts our souls, our collective souls over here. So just to make us feel better, why not just hit like and subscribe? Give us a little warm virtual hug, and then we'll get after it. Yes. Yes. What is up, everybody? And welcome to Matt Turner's favorite podcast in Soccer We Trust. Listen, Matt Turner's the only one, I think, coming out smelling like roses after these two friendlies, 180 minutes for the U.S. men's national team after getting 2 consecutive clean sheets. I'm here, Jimmy Conrad, alongside Hollywood Heath Pearce. Charlie Chuck Wagon Davies will be joining us shortly. He apparently was getting one of his 17 cars washed, and he wanted to make sure they didn't miss his spot. But those are all really the jokes, Heath Pearce. You know, we're walking into a situation where I'm frustrated, I'm concerned, I'm worried. Now, of course, this team will be remembered for what they do at the World Cup and not a friendly before it. But I assume you're concerned as well. We got 54 days now to really hem and haw about this team. And really what I want to throw to you, Hollywood Heath Pearce, is that I feel like I've left these 180 minutes with more questions than I have answers, and that adds to my concern.
I am officially no longer hater-proof, Jimmy. I am riddled with haterade, and I need these. I threw on these hater blockers just to get me through this show because you know things aren't looking great, JC. And I am extremely disappointed in the way this team came out. I am also reminded of how young this team is in terms of the courage they have, the experience they have, the nerves that they're clearly showing in a moment like this. We talked about it with Tim Howard a couple days ago in terms of like who are the leaders, right? Our leader is still one of the kids who's going through his own stuff, who's releasing a book. You know, like this is our captain. It has not gone
and his own shoe,
plan,
and his own World Cup shoe, right?
Yeah, and his own World Cup shoe. But he's still young, and when I look at this team, I saw a few moments early on where you're like, oh yeah, they're trying to solve for some of the things that they did before. When I see today, Jimmy, I go to last game, Gregg Berhalter. I go to this game. Those are the players, and the players are connected to both of those. And I just didn't see. I saw a few flashes and a few moments, but overall, when you talk about responding or bouncing back or showing the things that you need to when you represent the crest, it felt a little 2018-y to me in terms of like fear and nerves, and not that fight and that discipline and that confidence of like we collectively will go out there and get a result regardless of how or what it takes to get a result today. So I'm extremely a little flustered. I'm disappointed.
I'll jump in here. We're going to get into the starting lineup because you mentioned that it was more on the players today, and I don't think Gregg gave them an assist in some ways as we look to transition. But before that, I want to get to somewhat of a statement that I want to make to, hopefully, if the players probably shouldn't listen, but if they were, there was one thing that I thought about before going to the World Cup and playing and knowing that I was going to start a World Cup game. And I honestly, even despite my experience, I was 29 at the time. I played against Italy, okay? I came in as a sub. I didn't have time to think, right? I just went out there and played and just tried to enjoy myself and live in the moment and try to make the best plays, best soccer decisions that I could at that time. But I played so poorly, Heath Pearce, in the practices leading up to the Ghana game in the World Cup because I knew I was starting. It was so bad, Heath, that I had Mooch Meyernick, rest in peace, come over to me and say, "Are you okay?" Like the last thing you want is the assistant coach to come ask you if you're okay because you're playing so poorly. Because I was way in my head. I was way in my feelings. I was way overthinking things. And I can sense a little bit of that, to your point before, with some of these players. Now, when the game came, I said to myself, whatever happens is going to happen. I just don't want to be timid. I don't want to go out there and play with fear. I just want to play. If I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough. But I don't want to go out there and play with fear. I don't want to regret that performance. And if I had an opportunity to have my own speech with the guys, that's where I would lean. I would lean into that space because it looks like we're being timid and we're playing with fear. Not everybody.
But you know, yeah,
but there are some. You know what happens? It's like a lack of consistency in decision making. Sometimes you see the confidence for 5 minutes, and then all of a sudden they make a mistake, and that impacts them for the next 5 or 10, which then speaks to their youth. Go ahead.
Yeah, there was a few moments in there where it looked like, okay, we're turning it around. We play a little more direct. We get the ball up the field. We get in behind them. There was a lack of just crucial final balls and things like that made us lethal in and around the box. But at least it was like, okay, at least we've decided that we're going to stretch them. Weston McKennie is going to make a run over the top today, and he did it multiple times. We saw it with Gio Reyna a few times that he sprung out on in transition, and I saw a few of those things, and I was like, okay, at least we're better than we were in that game. But then I'm still left thinking like, okay, but how are we going to score goals in a World Cup? Where are they going to come from, right? And then when we go in those stretches where we're not playing super well, we allow teams to get chances on goal. We allow them to just, without earning it, without us suffering, without making them suffer, they just come down to our goal, 1, 2, 3 touches, bomb, 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 and now they're getting a half chance or a decent look on frame. And I'm like, that is problematic. And when I look at this team, they all play at higher levels, right? We get it. But, you can criticize the MLS guys all you want. They all play at decent levels. Like there's nobody playing in somewhere that's less than
the Saudi Arabian professional league.
yeah. But again, Saudi Arabia was missing multiple players in this game, and Saudi Arabia probably had a mixed bag in terms of how they felt they played today. But large periods, they were able to come back in it, establish, control some flow and tempo of the game, not look like they were fearful of us whatsoever. I didn't see any fear in one of those players from the Saudi teams, but I saw some fear from our players. And Jimmy, when you get into these situations, like you just mentioned, there's a mix of, hey, I'm going to go out. I'm going to play fearless. I need to get the job done. And then you have your first turnover, and that lactic acid builds up in your legs, and your heart's beating a little bit harder, and the adrenaline rush is kicked in, and you're thinking about every single thing that's about to happen and everything that you've done in your life up until that point.
Twitter's just piling on you right now.
Yeah, it requires 5/100ths of a second to process a thought, Jimmy. And you can imagine what 30 seconds is like when things are going well, and you're trying to mix, hey, I need to play my game to show I'm good enough to make the squad. Not just like, I'm not just show that I can play in this game or play simply or whatever. I'm trying to show I can make the team. So you're mixed with like doing more than you would usually do, because clearly if you're a fringe player, that hasn't worked so far. So you're trying to do more. You're trying to prove something. You're trying to impress. You're trying to solve for what the game is actually asking for you. And it's led to this sort of paralysis through analysis where guys look like they are not playing freely. And I thought this was a young team that was too young to be nervous, too young to be scared, too young to not play freely. And it seems like that's starting to set in that, oh my gosh, this World Cup is just a few minutes away.
So I appreciate that insight. I say that sometimes in my transitions, but let's talk about the lineup then, because Matt Turner, solid, made the shots or saved the shots that he should. You got Sergiño Dest. Now, no problem there on the left side. I just feel like we handcuff what he's capable of going forward. He got forward a couple times. And I do like when he cuts in and he hits that switch. I thought Joe Scally was good too.
Joe Scally. I'm taking him to the World Cup.
Off of 30 minutes.
I mean, why else would you put him on?
Well, I get it. I get it. I liked him too.
The game was more open. He was more forward, but I do think that again, it's the right side. So
it's like the one position where we're super deep and like we're pretty confident. I mean, I thought Yedlin was fine. I guess fine is really maybe not the word everybody's looking for, but I think that when Sergiño Dest is on the left, we're handcuffed a little bit in getting the most out of him and what he's capable of. Aaron Long, surprised that he started, dude. I'm surprised that Aaron Long started, but it makes me think that Gregg Berhalter doesn't see Mark McKenzie and Eric Palmer-Brown, who apparently had a hamstring issue and wasn't 100%, so he wasn't even being considered for this game. But he doesn't see them as real competitors to Aaron Long. He sees Cameron Carter-Vickers and Chris Richards as the real competition. So why not give another run out to Long and Zimmerman to maybe build that rapport? I don't know. They've played 12 games together now. 13 games together now. Seven wins, I believe, 3 losses and now 2 draws. Does that add up? 3 draws.
Aaron Long, I think this is true. Aaron Long and Walker Zimmerman played so bad in that first game, you had to play him again. And I've never, it's like rare that you see that, because it's generally like you play bad in the national team, you don't get another look, clearly, usually, right? Unless you're like an established player. But I think they played so poorly that Gregg wanted them to have another game together, as opposed to saying, well, if I give up on this or whatever, like they need to find a rhythm, because clearly Aaron Long's going to the World Cup. I as much as people hate that, he's going to the World Cup. I'm not saying he should. I'm not saying his performances have warranted that whatsoever, but he's going to the World Cup. And Gregg looks at that and goes, okay, I've got Aaron Long, or I've got Cameron Carter-Vickers, or I've got What's his name that's injured right now? Richards.
Chris Richards.
And take Cameron Carter Vickers out. You've got Richards and you've got Long in terms of the guys that he's like, these are the two of the guys that I could go with. And I think that because of that, he didn't go to plan. I think he probably would have played other center backs in those games, but like the spotlight is on right now. And those players needed to prove it. Again, it didn't get much better. I think there were moments where I think that we saw Zimmerman has a decent range of passing when given the time and space. But as soon as Saudi changed the way that they were playing and started pressing a little bit higher and forcing us to make decisions, that's when we get into trouble again. And so that back line, again, I liked Scally. It was a 30-minute small sample size. Nobody should be judged on that. And I know that we're deep. I didn't think Yedlin was very good in this game defensively.
Well, when he decided to actually get forward and he got kicked a few times, then we saw a little pluck from him, But I do think there was a lot of conservative playing, and I think our lineup was conservative. When you bring in Kellen Acosta into a midfield with Weston McKennie and Tyler Adams, you're not really looking to combine with your number 9. That was one of my big issues here. And so you're setting up, maybe Gregg wants to see us in that formation with Acosta on the field to see how we transition, because we didn't transition very well against Japan, which fair play to Japan. They did a very good job of shutting that down. Mm-hmm. I struggle a little bit with what's being asked of certain players. When I look at the Japan game, we'll keep it on the back line right now. Japan smartly let our center backs have the ball. But instead of our center backs going, okay, great, no problem, we're just going to dump them into the corner and play, which is what we did today when there was no pressure on the ball. We didn't have answers for that. We kept trying to cram things into the middle of the field, and we kept getting turnovered, or we turn the ball over and then go from there. And so I think there's a bit of a failure from Gregg in terms of asking players to do something that they're not capable of. We have to figure out ways to get the ball to our playmakers in better areas of the field. Not to say the guys aren't trying. I think they're trying, but I don't think we're recognizing what's available to us and when. And so that becomes a little bit frustrating. It felt like today there was an emphasis on hitting long balls over the top to Weston McKennie and hitting diagonals, either from Long over to Yedlin, which he missed one time, which didn't look great, and then obviously Zimmerman over to, well, probably Dest in some ways. Now, I think what's interesting about that tactic, I don't mind it. And I tweeted out at halftime that I think it can be a beautiful, no joke, it can be a beautiful tactic if it's well-timed and well-executed. And if you don't even win the first ball, if your team is ready for the long ball and then you turn and win the second ball and play from there. I've shared an example in a previous podcast about Sir Alex Ferguson doing this with Manchester United. Gary Neville will get the ball right back. If he can't play Beckham right away, then he'll play it up over the top because the left back had stepped up to Beckham. And now there's that little gap, and now it becomes a 50-50 ball between Ruud van Nistelrooy and the center back. Ruud usually came up with it because the timing was so good, and then they would play from there. And I had somebody come at me, which is fine. I don't have any problem coming at me on Twitter, but long ball shouldn't be is not a tactic. I agree to disagree. But if it's well-timed and well-executed, and it felt like our guys took it literally.
Long ball's not a tactic, by the way. Why? Charlie's been trying to get onto this show for a while, and we've just been punishing him for,
just listening to Nemanja Vidic over here. Vent.
Yeah, I am venting.
He does look like Vidic with his hood on. I can't tell if he has hair or not. You.
Oh, great to see you guys.
We said that you were getting your 17 cars washed, and you didn't like it when somebody missed a spot. But we're happy you're joining us. Yeah. So anyway, it just felt like the guys took it really literally. Like, we're going to hit a long ball every single time. Just like in the game against Japan, we're going to try to play everything through everything every single time. And Jimmy, I don't understand why our group of players take things so literally all the time.
It reminds me of my kids. If I tell my kid, like we had a game this weekend with the kids, and you play 3, like 1 in the midfield, 2 up top, 2 in the back. And I said to the 2 in the back, move forward. I'm not even coaching, just a parent on the side. I'm like, just move up, because they're standing in front of the goal. They're doing cartwheels. They're dancing. They're having fun. I'm like, move up. I'm like, go forward. And then they ran all the way to the other goal. And that was because you realize at that age that they don't understand nuance and there's no subtlety. It's like, you give me message, I follow that message. You said run up. So I just kept running until it was at the end of the field. And that's
headline here is like, Heath compares U.S. men's national team to U5 soccer team.
There was a literal interpretation of things today of, like you said, long ball. Oh, that worked. Hey, you know what we should do? More long balls. Huh? We should do more long balls. Instead of saying we use the long ball as a tactic, force that team to respect us. Now they have to make some other decisions. Underneath. And they can play. Yeah,
exactly. Charlie, give us your thoughts. Charlie, great to see you as always.
You knew I was coming in hot because we talked about seeing a team with an identity still 0-0. I'm looking. I don't see one. If we're talking about playing to our strengths, they don't even know what our strengths are because it's evident when someone gets on the ball, in particular a center back with time and space, they opt for a 5-yard pass. They wait, they sit, they look, no movement. One option in front of you, it's taken. Well, I'm going to force it in anyway because the emphasis is playing short. Or I'm going to play a nice little 5-yard pass to my center back partner. Who are you moving? If I'm the opposing team, I'm like, this is great. Look at this isn't a challenge. They're not moving us. If you have possession,
we can all clap and go.
Right.
Go.
If you have possession, the idea is to tire the other team out because you're forcing them out of position.
Possession with a purpose.
You're keeping them moving. You're creating passing lanes. You're making 1v2 situations. You're getting Christian Pulisic isolated. Where was that? There was nothing. And then on top of that, we could play P-Folk up there. We could play Sargent up there. We could play Pepe or Ferreira. It doesn't matter. Whoever's playing there has zero support.
Well, there
zero
was no
support.
Listen,
and
Chuck,
none
there
of them
was no central midfielders, though.
Yes,
who's going to combine with
regardless, they're on an island, and all our strikers in the pool, all of them, there is not one who can take the game by themselves. That you can say, I'm going to play you the ball into the channel, and we'll let you go to work. You're an Mbappe. You're a Haaland. We don't have that. That player does not exist. So therefore, whoever is playing in that position needs support. So I know we're talking about so late in the quick campaign right now before World Cup. I would argue that now's the time to change the system because this system does not work. It does not work. And so I don't care how many times you try and force it down these guys. We talk about a system where it's less complicated. Just saying,
I also don't think there's
buy-in. This is how we set up and we go.
I agree with that. I don't think there's buy-in either. And also I thought it was telling, Heath, that Gregg said after the Japan game, and I love your rants, Charlie, keep them going. They gave too much information to the players and they didn't process it or something to that effect. I'm paraphrasing. That's pretty telling that the guys need that much hand-holding, one, and that they didn't do any scouting to Japan. That's what I heard. And so now they're trying to create the system without actually focusing on the opponent and how that system could work against that particular opponent, which I think is pretty important. And I ultimately, though, I agree to your point, Heath. I think there's buy-in from some, but I don't think there's buy-in from all. No, and I think it showed over the last two games.
And think of Serginho Dest. I thought it was unimaginable you're going to put him on the left side. I thought there's no way
handcuffs
because you unbalance the whole team.
Yeah.
He comes inside. Christian comes inside. As soon as you lose possession, and you will lose possession because nobody's 100%, even Barcelona in their prime, they would lose the ball occasionally. You lose the ball, and this team is going to lose the ball a lot more often than the best of teams. Guess the spot that they hit first. That whole left side is completely open. And we saw Serginho come inside time and time again early in the first half. It's a bad ball. Boom, right to goal. And this is Saudi Arabia. They had the better of the chances in this game. Saudi Arabia, we talked about how we were underwhelmed with Japan and Saudi Arabia in this window. I would like to see Brazil. I'd like to see Argentina, France, Belgium. If we played them in this window, back-to-back 3-4-5-0 losses, without a doubt, if you played this way. However, maybe we don't
play. Could have been 3-4-5.
But maybe we don't play that way, right? Maybe they say we're going to just sit back and play a different style, force you to play a different style. I don't know. But what I'm saying is you expect to be dominant in this window, and we were everything but that.
I think that, to your point, and what he said before you came on, Charlie, we never made either one of the opponents suffer. Never once did I see them look like they were troubled by us. Sure, we had some moments, and the Ferreira chance against Japan, we created a couple opportunities, but it wasn't consistent. And it never really looked like it was a team on the back foot. Maybe we had Japan there for a little bit in the start of the second half for about 5 to 10 minutes where they looked like they were trying to figure us out. But once they did, then we struggled. Once Saudi Arabia sat back, that's when we struggled. Once they realized don't extend yourself, just sit back in a good mid block and a good low block if they get past you. They're not going to break us down. So that gets back to the Mbappe and Haaland team. I just want to say very quickly that about, I don't know, 250 countries don't have a Haaland or an Mbappe to lean on. But to your point, Chuck,
okay,
what are we doing to say that, though? Like, what are we doing? And this is the point you're trying to make. What are we doing to play to our strengths? And it doesn't seem like we're doing that.
Because we don't have a player who can break down somebody in the final third by themselves.
That's my point, is we get into a situation now where our best national teams have always been able to recognize when a team is vulnerable and you punish them. And when we have these moments where you can feel, okay, the U.S. have a little rhythm. Oh, they're getting in and around the box. There is never a moment where you go, oh, this is going to turn into something right now. It just goes something flat. And then within a few minutes, it's like, oh, yeah, we've completely forgotten about that momentum. We don't have that ruthlessness that we've seen of national teams in the past, where when they smell blood, a goal happens or something happens, where you can feel that lean, where it starts to really, really push on them. And they're like, oh, my gosh, Saudi can't get out of their box. They can't get out of their half. You can feel that lean and that the recognition of the players of going, hey, we've got him somewhere. Let's keep on pushing. It's just like a little wave, and then it just fizzles off. And then it goes back to 20, 30 minutes of nothing.
It's like watching scripted TV. When you're watching the U.S. play, it looks like everything is pre-planned and the opposition knows exactly what's coming. We're not surprised. They're not surprised because there's no creativity. We talk about creativity, but it's all the same things. They get it wide. FIFA, okay, here I go, cross, and the cross is lobbed up and it's hopeful. Have you ever seen a cross and you look at the lines of the players making runs? They're all on the same line. Mm-hmm. There's not a varied run, a hard near post run, a back post run, a penalty spot. So you have different options. They're all on the same line.
Okay, Chuck, I'm
taking 2 steps back.
I get it. Yeah, I feel like it. And I said this before and I tweeted it out. I feel like I have more questions than answers now. And that's a really shitty spot for us to be in 54 days away from the World Cup. Mm-hmm. You said that Gregg needs to change his system. I want to harken back to 1998 when Steve Sampson was our coach. And this dude was changing systems night before the games at the World Cup. And it was an absolute disaster because he just didn't have any confidence in his vision at that time. And he was tinkering too much. I'm not saying that Gregg and Steve are the same, but I don't know if that's the recipe to solve this either, is to all of a sudden change a system that Gregg has been solidly behind the whole time. Listen, I agree with you. It's not working. But I don't know if that's the answer either. Because I got a lot of questions.
Okay,
I'm a little myth. Go ahead, Chuck. You go first, and then Heath, I want to hear from you.
I'm seeing a lot of change the system, but how do you change the system? What's the solution? How do you move forward? Well, think about your strengths. We can't go to a back three because we don't have 3 quality center backs. So that is out the window. I don't want to see back 3 again because we're
not scoring. I'll go back 3. I'll go back 3.
No,
if our best team is our attackers and they're not scoring goals, let's put in a back 3 and then change what we have up top. You're gonna have to lose one of your attackers.
So you want to try and win 6-5? Is that what you're trying to do in a World Cup? You think you're gonna win 6-5 in a World Cup?
I mean, a win's a win. What are we talking about? A W's a W.
Do you think that would be possible? You think that's realistic?
We're gonna I don't know.
What 3 center backs are you going with? Who's the 3 center backs?
I mean, I would go with Chris Richards, Walker Zimmerman, and then give me one more. Give me one more.
Listen.
Oh, come on, man.
Would you rather? Do you trust 2 center backs?
I would rather go a flat back 4 with 2 defensive midfielders.
We just did that today, dude.
What 2 defensive midfielders?
We didn't say, Weston, you're sitting with Tyler Adams and you're going to be defending.
We have Kellen Acosta on the field next to. I mean, whether he's sitting right now,
was out there trying to be Pirlo.
I get you, but his instincts are to play defense.
The problem with Kellen Acosta right now in this system, in this game, was exactly why it didn't work, because Saudi Arabia was not coming and staying high and pressing us or launching long balls where you needed to win second balls, where Kellen Acosta is great. That's where he's at his best. He's just winning second balls and he's tackling. He's not forced to produce. That's why I wanted to see Gio Reyna in the midfield.
You and me both. Why wouldn't we take these 90 minutes to do that, Chuck? I don't. That's on Greg Berhalter.
Yes, it is.
For putting us in a situation where you handcuff our best attacking outside back and put him at the left side when he's right-footed.
Yep.
And then you start Kellen Acosta when
we
Saudi Arabia
today. That's 2
Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia
yes,
scored,
but he wasn't
two
playing
goals
in that role. But either way, he shouldn't have been on the pitch. They're not a team that's going to be.
But he put in a
us.
6
This
to
isn't
make him
France
an 8.
or Argentina or Brazil.
We're arguing about the same goddamn thing. Listen, they
I
scored
know,
2
that's
goals
my
in their
point.
last 8 games.
My
Saudi
point
Arabia, 2
is,
goals in the last 8
we
games.
don't
Why
have,
not put an attacking player in the midfield?
we don't have support up top for whoever's playing the 9. It does not exist. Christian Pulisic is out of form. We're forgetting that. This isn't the Christian Pulisic who's at his best. He's lacking match sharpness and match fitness. He's searching for the ball. He's coming so deep because he can't get involved. We're not looking for him. Whoever's playing up top as a 9, it doesn't matter. It could be Christian Pulisic. Whoever's running is not getting the ball. We're not even looking. We're not even looking.
Somebody said we're angrily in agreement.
we are angrily in agreement. What I'm saying is we're all passionate about this. We want this team to succeed. Right now, not only is the system not working, the players who are being picked for this system are not the right fit. So,
or they're not buying in. They don't want to do the work that's being asked of them, which is a different conversation.
How can you play Gio Reyna as a right winger when his strengths are being on the ball and running at players, being a 1v1, and in this system, he's just tasked with running deep and making sprints.
In this game,
you know he's fragile, right? Yeah. Get him on the ball. We had midfielders who were hiding. We had center backs who can't find options, and they're forced with playing the game. We're never going to win. We are never going to win in this manner. It's not going to happen. We are not threatening. It's predictable. It's easy.
Listen, our whole plan should be, how do we get Gio Reyna the ball? How do we get Christian Pulisic the ball that he's a little bit closer to goal? How do we get our striker getting some meaningful touches? Ricardo Pepi had 12 touches in the first half. That's not on Ricardo Pepi. That's on how we're trying to supply him the ball and get him the ball. So now some of it is on him, but it's not all on him. And the system has to be looked at. The fear is that the system, I just don't know if you can change it at this point. And I don't know if Gregg will. And I don't even know if he should, because this is what he's done to get us to this point.
Yeah.
And
it's to this point. If you want to excel and be better than that, then you have to look yourself in the mirror. You have to look at the team and the performances and say, you know what? They're not getting it. I clearly miss.
You got to simplify it. I agree.
Yes.
There's a thing that Bob Bradley used to say that stuck with me. And I know I've said it a bunch of times on here, but he used to always say, like, it's a good pass. Is there a better one? And I feel like this team right now is going for the pass that's the next pass for them to take away any of their own accountability versus the better one, a penetrating pass, a diagonal ball, a 1-2 wall pass, the creativity that comes into play, as opposed to just being like, get it off my foot. That's not my problem anymore. And that's what it feels like the confidence to me this team has right now, which is get it off my foot. I'm playing for a job here. I don't want this in around me to increase my risk of making mistakes. I'm going to play simple. I'm going to connect the dots. And this team is now without what feels like an identity. And yeah, you can go back a year ago and say, hey, what made us good was set pieces, right? We won Gold Cup. We won Nations League, set pieces. Even that's not there anymore. Even that's not a threat. So if all we've got is set pieces, at least be the best at anybody in the World Cup going into it at set pieces. At least that's your thing you can go to when things are going bad. But right now, I cannot tell you how this team plans on a goal kick, on what phases of the field they plan to build up, where they plan to attack from.
They don't know that.
From a game plan standpoint. And then exactly. And then I couldn't tell you which players know when the right time for them to alter that system and say, well, I'm seeing something else here. I'm going to go and do it. Or I'm going to see.
No, yeah. These are great shots.
That's buy-in, right? That's buy-in.
One of the things that I thought was of interest was the fact that there was this overemphasis on hitting long balls to the point where they took it literally. and then secondly, I love the long ball, baby.
Hey, move the lines. Move the lines.
Well, it doesn't matter. We're gonna win the second ball anyway. Shut your mouth. Okay. So yes, maybe I said that on a few occasions. But
Jimmy, let me hold on real quick, Jay, on that. I played it. My second national team game was against Canada in a January camp, and all they did for 90 minutes was lump it up to Rob Friend, who brought it down, laid it back, and then played it wide, who whipped the ball into the box. And I remember going like, if this is football, I don't want anything to do with this ever again. Like, I'm ready to fly it back to Denmark.
In San Diego?
It was down in San Diego. It was 2006.
I played that one.
You remember that game? Yeah, it was wild. Just isolate.
I had to mark Rob Friend. I knew exactly.
Yeah. But it worked in the sense that they forced you to have to like collapse on the second ball. They lay it off. They get it wide, isolate you one-on-one, whip the ball into the box. And I remember that being the ugliest thing ever, but also remembering like how hard it was to play against that when a team does it well and that's their system.
That was a 0-0 game as well, and we did have trouble breaking them down. And to your point, Heath, I think that Canada team in particular, and I think this goes for the bigger conversation, they didn't try to be anything that they weren't. And sometimes I think that we're trying to do that, as opposed to sometimes we got to roll up our sleeves. And sometimes it happens in mid-game. Can you roll up your sleeves and just make some goddamn tackles and change
it's so off. People are talking about, are we planning for 2026? That's how far the plan is off right now, that people are saying, is this 2026 training right now? We are 5 years from a World Cup.
Well, we always knew
people are thinking because it's so far. Yeah.
We knew that they were going to gain some experience here in 2022, which should give them that valuable, okay, I know how this goes for 2026. Now, the one point I wanted to make tactically, which I thought was of interest, was that we didn't press high. We pressed high on goal kicks, but we didn't press high.
Thank God you brought that up.
And I thought that was interesting because
we didn't even
it seems like now
we defended.
We did like a mid block pressure, and I'm like, okay, so Gregg clearly wants to work on this. I assume it's going to be more for the England of our group as opposed to Wales or Iran, but maybe not. Now, Wales coach Rob Page was in attendance. I'm sure he enjoyed all 90 minutes of that.
Do you think mid is top of the circle, or do you think mid? We were
top of the circle. He did top of the circle, right? And you can see Ricardo. He definitely had some orders on what to do and when. And I found that to be interesting because, okay, you bring in Acosta. We don't high press consistently, right? Like kind of what we're known for under Gregg. So he is tinkering a little bit, to your point, Charlie, about maybe changing the system in some capacity, or maybe it was just based on the opponent. And yes, Saudi Arabia, for me, they had better chances than us.
100%.
But a lot of ours were self-inflicted, like a bad pass or and to Heath's point, we didn't find the better pass out of certain situations. Or we're trying to cram it in like we did against Japan. We're still having a problem with that. Now, as you guys know, you play games at the highest level, and that type of mistake is going to be in the back of the net. That's just how it works. So we have to eliminate those as soon as possible. But it was interesting to me that we saw a different type of pressing system from the team today.
I see a lot of comments saying this was the same system we had against Mexico. Why did it work then and not now? Well, because Mexico doesn't sit back and defend. They come out and play. They think they're the better opponent. They're going to be on the front foot. They're going to push their numbers high. They can leave themselves vulnerable because they think they're going to bet on themselves to win and keep possession. That's where we were able to find those passes and those gaps and set pieces. We had to come together and defend first. This was a team dropping off. Look at all of our road qualifiers. We sucked. Yeah. We absolutely sucked.
Yeah, we weren't great.
And it goes back to if we're gonna sit back and defend and have our center backs play the ball, then why not bring in the best playing center backs that we have that aren't called into the camp? And I know I've been the most critical of John Anthony Brooks and Tim Ream. But guess what? If you're gonna now sit back and sit on top of your goalkeeper and play these 5-yard balls and then look for the
high line doesn't matter anymore. Yeah, the high line doesn't matter anymore.
Then put him in. Tim Ream plays every week against the best players in the world. I know he's slow and he goes out to the touchline like John Anthony Brooks. They're snails. They're going to get burnt. But then don't have them do that. Because if you sit back and you stay compact like they do for Fulham, then guess what? You might have some success. You might be able to catch teams on the counter. You're going to find Gio Reyna and Christian Pulisic in those spaces because teams are going to be stretched. Ultimately, all right, everybody. That's not how Gregg Berhalter wants to play, and that's why they're not called in. Then you got to find a different way to play to get the best out of the most talented players in this roster.
No, great shout. All right, everybody. I'm stumbling because I'm so excited to get to this break, so we can talk further because we need to get into it a little bit more. This is In Soccer We Trust. Thank you for listening and watching, and of course, commiserating with us about this U.S. men's national team's 2 friendlies. We'll be right back right after this break.
The UEFA Champions League. 9 months of heart-stopping, hold-your-breath exhilaration. While Mbappe shines in the city of lights, Benzema's racking up the hat tricks, and the Reds want more magic in Liverpool. This ain't amateur hour. This is the best of the best of the best. This is the UEFA Champions League. Stream every match live on Paramount+.
Welcome back, everyone, to In Soccer We Trust. I'm Jimmy Trash Can Cream Cheese Conrad alongside Charlie Chuck Wagon Davies and Hollywood Heath Pearce, and we are breaking down the 0-0 draw between the U.S. men's national team and Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia had more shots than us, but we had shots on goal, baby. That is a marked improvement for the Japan game where we didn't have any. Let's look at the bright side of everything. So, Hollywood, I'm going to throw it to you on this. And if you haven't hit subscribe on your podcast platform of choice, please do that. Leave a 5-star review. We'd really appreciate that. Or hit like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. If you're Gregg Berhalter, the staff right now, what are you discussing? What are you thinking about? What's your post-mortem, as it were, as it pertains to not only this game, but maybe the 180 minutes overall?
You know that Ben Affleck with like smoking the cigarette thing, where his like shirt's a little unkempt and let everybody post around having like that's the Gregg Berhalter I'm thinking about right now. You know, the 2-3 fingers on the forehead, kind of looking down. You know, or like the one from Narcos where he's like you know, kind of looking off, where he's sitting on the swing by himself.
Pablo Escobar
Pablo
sitting
Escobar
on the swing,
looking off into the
park
distance when
bench.
he's standing. Like those. I mean, I think. If anything, you got your answers, which was maybe not player selection wise. You don't have your answers, but you sure as heck got answers on the guys that you trust are not ready for the system that you tried to deploy in this one, right? We've always been good. I know that the players have complained about having to press too much and too often and too high and feeling vulnerable and not wanting necessarily to do that. This was a complete change from that, going into these deep areas and trying to defend there. And we're clearly not good. And I think we have better players, and you need to have good center backs that under pressure and deep blocks can find the first 2-3 passes to get out, change the point of attack, and then allow your team to get up underneath. So I think if there's anything to take away from these, it's that the system that they wanted to play in this, which has been quite a bit different than what we've seen in the past, or at least in my interpretation of it, doesn't work. And you want to bring that back out? Guess what? January of next year, you get to try that again and try to deploy this type of play where you're set up your lines, where you're going to build up who your center backs on the ball, things like that. Or bring John Anthony Brooks back in, bring Tim Ream back in, somebody who's really good on the ball, comfortable in tight spaces, can defend on the top of their box. They're going to have weaknesses that we are all well aware of, like Charlie mentioned, but they're going to at least help you in that type of scenario. Or bring a hybrid approach. Because if you want to be able to go to that, you better have the players that can go to that. And if you want to go to a high press system, go to the players that can play in that system. There's a reason why players play at different clubs around the world, that make it at different levels around the world, in different systems around the world, because they can't play in certain things. We all have strengths and weaknesses. At the peak of your career, at the peak of your game, you are still going to have a bunch of weaknesses. And this team has clear weaknesses in the way that we play based on the personnel that we're putting in those positions to execute.
Yeah, and weaknesses that I think have been exposed, especially by Japan. I was like, oh my God, they just laid out the playbook for all of our opponents in the World Cup. Charlie, do you feel like there's going to be any players now that have benefited from this 180 minutes that weren't here? Obviously, Cameron Carter-Vickers, Chris Richards probably looking better. Ream and Brooks, but a Jordy Pefok, you know, is he one? You know, Yunus Musa, I think, looks like a gem. We've already talked about him, but it's clear that we could have used a little bit of his personality, to use Gregg's word, in the middle of midfield to help us break the lines and help us transition in a more meaningful way and more consistently, right? Because we did it a few times, but it wasn't like this consistent type of pressure of us getting the ball and always kind of being on the front foot.
Well, I think one, to start from the back, is Anthony Robinson is indispensable. No one else can play there. He is the only left back we have. Unfortunately, we need him to be 100% healthy and fit and in form come the first game of the World Cup. So that's the first point. I think we need him to be fit because he kind of gives us an identity. He has that edge because you know exactly what he gets. He's consistent. He's tough. I like him as the left back too. I think he's improved his game as well. So we need him. The center back pairing needs to be figured out ASAP. And Chris Richards is got to be the guy because Aaron Long, again today, lost the ball too many times without pressure. Heath, you talked about taking risks, taking not the easy route. Sometimes there's got to be a better ball, a more challenging ball, but it's worth the risk. We aren't taking enough risks. We don't have enough risk takers, especially.
But he might not have that in his half. He might not have that in his locker. You know, he might not be able to make that better pass.
Right. So then,
but Jimmy, as a professional, you should be able to hit a long ball.
I get it.
You should feel comfortable switching the ball on. You know, we know some guys, they can cut the grass with a perfect ball. Some float it. But you still have to have enough clubs in your bag to be a professional, you know, to know that, like, yes, as much as I know that this might be a turnover and this team's been working hard to get the ball back, that's the right ball to play. Walker Zimmerman, once he locked in on that one, you could at least see that confidence of like that willingness to test a rangy pass or an entry ball.
And I would say that Aronson is not a center midfield with this national team. I don't think he's taken enough steps forward to be considered as a starter in the center of the park for this team. However, I think he's a great option in that right winger spot, especially when Timo Weah is not here, because Yunus Musa is the gem. He is, for me, the best player in this group. He's the best. He has the highest ceiling. He's our best attacking talent because out of the midfield, he can dribble by people. He has that burst of pace. He's good in second balls. He kind of does it all.
Wait, didn't you say Yunus Musa like 3 or 4 months ago? Heath and Charlie say that Yunus Musa can't, like, I need to see him score. I need to see him get assists.
Yes, I think the final ball was missing from him. That was clear.
It's changing under Gattuso at Valencia. I get it. But we haven't seen him do it for the national team yet.
He goes and plays centrally for Valencia, and he's starting to develop.
But what we're asking him to do could be different than what Gattuso's asking him to do at Valencia.
But playing in the middle of the park is playing in the middle of the park.
Fair.
Christian Pulisic needs to find minutes. And 5 minutes fast because he just doesn't look sharp.
I mean,
like Chelsea U23s at this point.
Are you saying you would change him then? Would you put somebody else there if he plays like this in a World Cup?
Well, we don't have anyone else to play there. Who would play over him? Brandon Aronson? That's the only option that you could possibly say. I mean,
this is my problem with left back too, is we don't have any challenging players or ones that you would step in and, like, if we don't have Jedi Robinson, what do we do? If we don't have Pulisic in form, what do we do?
Yeah, our depth has definitely been tested, I think, and shown as a vulnerability for our team where we thought maybe it's papering over cracks. Maybe we're being too hopeful.
But the center forward position, no matter who's playing there, P-Folk especially, he needs support. That's why he's thriving with his club. He has a partner, a striker partner who plays incredibly well off of him, makes great runs, opens up space. He's not the only one. He needs support. And if he's playing in this team, this system is not going to work for him. He needs somebody next to him. And so that's when I say you need to change the system if you want to play Jordan P-Folk. And if P-Folk's one of the top strikers in a league where their team's at the top of the table.
I wonder what we're going to do at this point. Let's talk about Gio Reyna really quick, though, because he came out in the 27th minute. He basically subbed himself off. It wasn't pre-planned by U.S. Soccer, not to give him just 30 and
straight to the tunnel.
Sum off. He went straight down the tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
U.S. Soccer coming out and saying precautionary, just trying to be safe and smart about Gio. But this is concerning. Hollywood, I'll go back to you on this. It just seems like some of our players are pretty brittle, and he might be Mr. Glasshouse of all the glass houses we have on our team.
Yeah, because it's two things, right? Either it's an actual injury or it's a mental thing. And the mental thing is just as bad as an injury sometimes. If that's going to be every time you feel a little, and this is what we see with chronically injured players, is that little bit of, like, in the back of my mind, whether it's scar tissue or something doesn't feel right or something compensation acts up, your brain starts to go, something's wrong. And so either way, it's bad because, you know, I hope that he's mature enough that this was precautionary, that goes, something felt a little off, just want to be smart, take myself out, much bigger picture. But I would think that a 19-year-old probably doesn't have the ability to think that holistically about the situation and probably felt a little bit something. I'm speculating on a ton of stuff right now to say that is wrong of me, but I do think that it is a fear of mine that either it's something physical or it's something mental, and those two things are both wildly important in the context of it all, or both.
And they can be intertwined. I think I've given this personal story before, but when Bob called me to play in 2 tournaments, to play in the Gold Cup in 2007 and then back it up with Copa America, my wife and I had our first baby, and it was stressful. It was just a stressful time, and all the pressure I put on myself to be there and to be a good dad and to whatever that means. Everybody's got their different definition of that. But my dad wasn't around all that much when I was a kid, so it was really important for me to do that, especially when she was born, blah, blah, blah. But I told Bob I could do both. But as it started to go on, and before the camp or first the Gold Cup started, I started to get more stressed out about leaving my baby for 8 weeks. That's a big ask, you know, but I'm not going to say no to the national team. Obviously, your window to play in general is very, very small, but it was just so overwhelming for me. I pulled my hamstring, and you guys knew that I took care of myself. I did yoga all the time. I tried to eat right. I knew my advantages of gaining on other players weren't going to be talent. It was going to be all the little things, all the intangibles. And so I tried to make sure that I took advantage of that, but it was the mental side. So all of a sudden I pull my hammy, and that rules me out of the Gold Cup. Cool, problem solved. Now I only have to miss a couple weeks, and I'm down in the Copa America. So I wonder if there is, and I'm glad you brought it up, a little bit of a mental component. I don't know what it is that's holding Gio Reyna back, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's something in there that's tying the two things together.
I would take the opinion of a player who is desperate to play in the World Cup. And if he feels anything that gives him any type of similar feeling that he has felt in the past, then he's going to pull himself out at the first
That's fair.
chance he can. So I'm going to go.
Do you think
with,
that that's also, Charlie, and sorry to interrupt, but don't you also think that also comes out to you playing, like, how hard are you playing in the game? Like, how much are you willing to give to protect yourself? And we've seen players that do this in the week that have like injury things. They don't train hard, or they're very protective, or in a game they come out because they're nursing a little bit of something. Like, I'm not saying that was the case with Reyna today, but it's hard to just draw a line on, like, I'm going to go all out, and the moment I feel it, I take myself out and protect myself. You're kind of also just like, oh, no, maybe I shouldn't overextend, or
And as a 19-year-old who's desperate to play in a World Cup, I understand the hesitancy not to go all 100% and risk pulling a hamstring at this stage of the campaign. You want to play in that World Cup. So again, that's why I think he should have been central. It would have been less running and more on the ball. And you don't have to worry about him opening up strides. It's more of like pulling off the bat off the midfielder's shoulder, getting the ball on the half turn, and then dribbling and then creating that, where you're not really thinking because you're playing with the ball, and it's not so much about making these long runs without the ball. That you're not playing to his strength if you're just asking him to make these long pressing runs or long runs in behind. He's not Timo Weah. He's a player that comes inside, and that's why the midfield position, I think, would have been ideal for him.
Now, do you think there's been any players that played themselves off of this team? Heath, I'll come to you in this window.
Man, that's tough. I mean, played themselves off. I think Sam Vines is out. I think I don't know where Malik Tillman fits into this picture. I mean, it's a really hard
in, right? De La Torre's in.
De La Torre, I think, is in just for depth.
And he plays a style
he plays a style that I think in the right circumstances works, and we've seen it work before with the national team.
Work well.
It's really I'm going down
Johnny Cardoso out.
Johnny Cardoso out. Yeah.
Jordan Morris didn't do anything to help his case.
Yeah,
Reggie Cannon
Cannon
didn't play well, and now he's injured. So I could see him.
I think he's out. I mean, you got your first two.
Eric Palmer
right
Brown
backs.
Probably out.
Yep, he didn't play at all, so he didn't impress.
So do you take JMO or do you take Areola? I think one of the two are going.
I think Areola is the guy that he's always gone to. He's the most capped player in this pool under Gregg Berhalter. I think he's got 30-something games under Berhalter. So I think he goes. I don't think he's a guy that we go to or have to rely on if we're close to full strength, probably at all in the World Cup. But a guy that I do think that is probably at the age that if he looked at him and said, I want you to do these 3 things for the next 20 minutes, is going to do those exact 3 things, right? As opposed to some of our younger players are going to have more thoughts and opinions, I think, that we're seeing come out, which is a mix of a game plan and egos and people and young talented roster. So I think Ariel is in.
How about
trying to think who else?
Mark McKenzie. I'll go to Charlie on this one. Mark McKenzie.
I think he played himself out because in the first substitute appearance against Japan, he thought, okay, there's something there. One kind of bad giveaway, but there's something there. It was better than Aaron Long, but he still opted to go with Aaron Long, who dug himself in a deeper hole.
I thought so too. That was interesting.
He might have played himself out of the World Cup squad, let alone just being a starter. He might have played himself all the way out because he just couldn't
out.
complete
Then McKenzie's in.
No, I mean,
but Long's in. Gregg loves
Long's in. Yeah, I think Long's in. He might have fallen down. He might have opened up his.
There's no way he is considered now for a starting spot as a center
maybe
back.
not starting, but
it's all Richards then.
I think
Richards
or Chris Richards,
Vickers?
and then Cameron Carter-Vickers has moved up the track. I'd say he's the third option now after Chris Richards, and Zimmerman wasn't good either. No. That's the thing. Zimmerman was bad too. So you look at the depth chart. It's like you can't start from scratch.
For me though, it's which one of those 4 center backs is the best leader. That has to be taken into consideration, and I think given that Walker's not in the captain's armband, I think it's Walker that would be one starting.
On that, do you think there is any chance? I mean, we know that Brooks is not coming back. That Ream could be a late call just for
Ream's not a bad shot, potentially,
or leadership
is
or
a
experience.
Great person, leader.
And he's kind of like Gregg as a player, to be honest.
Greg values that.
Yeah, Gregg wasn't fast, and he was left-footed and could play, right? Like he had a good, good passing
that
range.
that goes against everything that Gregg's been saying for the past 2 years.
So that undermines his whole messaging for 2 years. Well,
so unless you want to completely change the system and
that's what you're asking him to do.
well, it has to. It can't stay the same.
I understand.
It can't.
We
won't score goals in this way unless we're scoring off a penalty kick or a set piece. We aren't going to score goals in the run of play in this fashion.
But we look at this team right now, and when you're going into World Cup against Wales in November, you might be starting with Walker Zimmerman coming out of maybe a gap of whether they go deep in the playoffs or not, and Chris Richards, who might not play another minute before the start of a World Cup, as your two starting center backs next to Serginho Dest, who's probably not going to play many minutes because we could be second or third in the depth chart at AC Milan.
And Anthony Robinson could be behind
Robinson, who's injured.
And he's also behind
and coming back,
competing with Kurosawa.
Behind Kurosawa,
And so in front of a Matt Turner who's played maybe 4 Europa League games.
We're flying, boys. We're absolutely flying right now.
Okay. Go into the midfield, right?
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, you can
go all the way through. You got McKinney, who could or could not be playing. He'll probably be playing. Musa, who's going to be playing if he's healthy. Adams is going to be playing if he's healthy, right? So assume that
the strongest part of our team.
Yeah. Okay. Strongest part of our team, but not indicative of the way that we play because we clearly couldn't play through this without Musa. Christian Pulisic, who might not play minutes before the World Cup, or a ton of them, or he'll play some, but maybe not in the form that we want him in, confidence-wise or consistent. Okay, then you go up top. That you're going with Ferreira, depending on where they fall into the season. You got Pepe, who probably be playing at Groningen in the form that he's in right now, and then Josh Sargent, who's playing as your 3 sort of core options. And then on the other side, Timo Weah hasn't played single minute, hurt, or is apparently not hurt. We don't know.
No, and then he's finally back training, so
he's back training. Okay, Brendan Aronson, who will likely be playing in that spot. Or Gio Reyna, who we don't know from a health
always on the precipice of being hurt. Yeah. Good times, boys. We're cruising. So here's a question, and I'm kind of curious to hear from you both on this, and anybody else that wants to chime in, hit us up on Twitter as well at ISWT Pod. Drop us a follow there if you're so kind. At what point or let's just say us? What do we need? I got to rephrase that. When do we start to switch to we got these guys as backs? Not to say we can't criticize, but it feels like we're just swimming in the warm waters of negativity and frustration.
That's easy.
Right, that's easy. But I mean, at what point do we get behind the guys that are going to be representing our country in the World Cup?
Has anyone said they're not behind?
No. But it's no. They're not. I'm not saying that they're not.
That's not.
But
I would say for us
and the coaching staff too. This isn't just isolated to the players, but also with the coaching staff.
I would say our job, Jim, is
I love the Jim. He's serious, everybody.
is to give critique when it is needed.
Of course.
Right now it is needed
in every area of
all
the field.
Players, all staff. That is what we're doing. We are calling it like we're seeing, and we're being honest. That does not mean we don't support our national team. That doesn't mean we don't support our players and our coaches. All 3 of us have played. We have an affinity for the national team that will never leave us. We will always be part of this brotherhood. We will always support this group. However, we want more from this group because we expect
know they're capable
more.
of it.
We know they're capable of it. Yeah. Yes. If this team sucked and they were out of it, there was no chance that they could perform, then it is what it is. And we say, all right, well, we're doing our best. That we know we're so much better than this. We're not creating chances. We're not dangerous.
But I guess what we're kind of also have been saying over this past almost an hour is maybe we aren't as good as we think we are. And maybe there has to be a little bit of that reality that's setting in that we maybe have to temper our expectations because maybe we're not as capable as we thought we were. I don't know. I'm just using that as a conversation.
We are stuck between a system-based manager and players that maybe don't necessarily fit all the systems or ways in which he wants to play, or have a willingness
they're not
to play
buying
that.
into
or they're not buying into it. And I think there's a little bit of that pushback now And we've all been in teams where you play and you're like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to, Thierry Henry talks about that, get the ball, pass the ball, whatever that documentary is, where they wanted him to just sit out on the touchline all the time. And his job was every time that somebody got the ball, it was to run over the top. And he was like, I don't want to run over the top. I want the ball at my feet, and then eventually bought into the system. And then it changed the way that the Barcelona played and all those things. A small little anecdote. But like, when I think about this team, I'm hoping that we've learned something, from these games in terms of, we saw the way Gregg wanted to play a couple years ago, right? And then we saw that evolve in terms of, is this going to be functional? Is it actually going to function? I mean, I would love to have played for a team that kept possession all the time. Didn't get the chance to, like I would have loved to play a beautiful way. We evolved from that into qualifying, and qualifying had consequences. So we went into a way that was functional. And it seems like now we came out of that going, okay, but can we be functional, but also have some different ways to play or different ways to look at the game, only to realize no. The answer to that is no. We have a very specific way that we need to be good at getting results. We need to be pressing high up the field. We need to win ball in better spots, because if we've got to build up, or if we've got to break down 11, or if we've got to do all those types of things, we've got nothing. And so I'm hoping that we look at this as a learning situation to rule out things that I feel, honestly, this team has done a decent job of evolving over time through a pandemic, of course, but evolving from being the idealistic, going back to Jurgen Klinsmann, the idealistic way we want to play, and the way that this national team will play someday, to where we are actually in reality, right? Where we are on that actual spectrum. And I think we're moving forward. Yes, we've taken a couple steps back in this camp, or a leap back, or at least we've ruled out things that, hey, we thought maybe we could get back to this because it's a World Cup, it's different than qualifying, but no, rule that out and let's go back to things that we know work.
Charlie, you're because I agree with you guys. There's no question about having the players back. And I remember that I had a fun thing I did on Kick TV where I was a little, let's say, not a biggest fan of Jurgen Klinsmann as a coach. Didn't mind him as an idea guy. I thought that he had great ideas. I think he pushed Sunil Gulati in particular.
Did you like him as a friend? Did you like him as a friend?
I don't know him as a friend. He wouldn't give me that opportunity. So how am I supposed to know?
Just trying to know which ways you liked about him, which ways you didn't.
Hell of a player. And I love that he brought him our player pool.
Okay.
Yeah, as a player, I liked him. As an idea guy, I thought he brought in our player pool, had some good ideas, but in terms of implementing his own ideas, I didn't really like him as a coach. That's just me. So I put out this campaign.
Drinking a beer in the tunnel,
smoking cigarettes at halftime. What am I supposed to do? So I ended up doing a little bit of a campaign and made some fun of it. And when I went out, it was at the Confederations Cup final, or for the chance to go to a Confederations Cup. It was at the Rose Bowl against Mexico. We ended up losing 3-2. It was weird to go out there and try to talk to the fans about wanting Jurgen out, but still making sure that everybody knew that I had the players back, because sometimes it's hard to separate the two. And so I just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on that. And that was a valuable learning experience for me, because yes, we want to be critical. We're going to be critical, but then at one point, like, I just want these guys to do well. And it's a really delicate balance. And I know that you guys want the team to do well, of course, but it's just, it sometimes gets whipped up into a frenzy, and we get caught up in it as well. So I just wanted to talk about that, because it's hard for me sometimes, where I still want, because these guys, they're human beings. We were those guys once too, and you can't help but go look to see what people are saying about you based on your performance.
Oh yeah, you're spot
and
on.
so, and when you see it, people that are quote unquote part of the brotherhood, Charlie, and even those guys are coming at you. You're like, yo, you don't have my back, And so that's it's interesting at times when you walk into those waters. And so, because you always want the players to know that you have their back no matter what, even when they struggle, especially when they struggle. And anyway, I just went off on some random tangent, but I wanted to chime in. Anybody else? The sad days. Charlie's got nothing. He's got nothing.
Yeah.
What I would say is just these players. We know that Tyler Adams is the heart of this team in the midfield, and when he's at his best, he's not getting pulled out into those wide areas. He's disciplined. He's staying central. He's protecting the back four, wins the ball, gets it off his foot. In this system right now, he's being charged with getting on the ball and making the game, as well as the center backs. That doesn't play to our strengths. It doesn't.
Right.
We want them to be bypassed. We want the ball at Christian's feet. We want the ball at Gio Reyna's feet and whoever's playing up top, and Yunus Musa. Those are the players that can get off the dribble and combine. How many times did we see somebody dribble today and beat somebody centrally and create space and draw people out of a position to find those areas where we can have a mismatch? It just didn't exist.
Yeah, Christian did it a few times, but then I didn't see Christian for 20 minutes. So it's like, how can we get him the ball in more meaningful ways? All right, let's get into our final thoughts. We appreciate everybody joining us for our raw emotion following the 0-0 draw against Saudi Arabia. Heath, I'm going to come to you first. Final thoughts. And then just as a reminder, we have 2 more shows this week for you. Thursday will be the next one. We'll be going live 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific. And then Friday will be 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. Hopefully you guys remember that. Hopefully you're writing it down. Heath, final thoughts.
I think that right now it's emotional. It feels like doom and gloom. I still believe in these players, this team. I think if anything, we need to recognize that some of the stuff is you rule it out, right? And I'm hoping that this was tinkering or testing things to see if, because you went into qualifying, because you don't have a lot of time when you are qualifying to try new things, that this was an attempt to try something new to see how this team would react and work off of it. And we've learned that it doesn't, and we can just put some of those things in the past and move back to things that we know work for us. That's my final thought for today.
Okay, Charlie, how about you?
I'm going to say that the system needs to change. I think we've all come to an agreement that it's not working. So things have to change, and that would be the system. Christian's not in form, but the best way to get a player like him going is putting him in those right spots on the field and get him isolated. We didn't do that enough. He has to search for the game. So play to Christian's strengths. We need Yunus Musa back ASAP. We need Anthony Robinson back ASAP. But I'm confident that this team will get it together for the World Cup.
I am too.
I think, there's a lot of things for this window that you could use as excuses. I think the best part is getting your butt kicked. They got their absolute asses kicked.
Oh, sorry, I said a bad word.
Jeez.
Now you respond. Nothing's a given. And these were 2 of the easiest.
Well, we thought they would after Japan,
foes.
Charlie. We thought they would after Japan.
No, but as a whole, you go back to your club. And these are of the easier foes. If you're talking about playing against England and Netherlands or Senegal in the next round, and Iran tied Senegal. So that lets you know how good Iran is. I mean, back-to-back impressive results. Uruguay win, and then Senegal draw.
That's
so
right.
This is an opportunity for Gregg and for the players to say, whoa, we got to get back to our backs against the wall and nothing is given. We got to earn everything and start just playing a little bit more simple. Make the system easier. And I'm behind this group. I am.
I would say to piggyback on that with regard to the system, and this is my final thought, that maybe less is more. That if we simplify it, to Charlie's point, then that will give our guys a little bit more freedom to be themselves, and hopefully it gets us a situation where we can adapt and identify problems very quickly, and we know how to play in and out of that. The big challenge, I think, for the coaching staff is how are you going to break through their noise at their club level when they're trying to prepare for games every couple of days, and then still give them the information that they need to know about Wales. That's going to be a big challenge, not only for our national team, but all the national teams out there. All right, everybody, thank you for listening and watching In Soccer We Trust. We appreciate your support and all of the insight and input that you have for us on any platform here on YouTube, on any podcast platform of your choice, and on social media. We really appreciate it. So on behalf of producer Des, producer Alex, Hollywood Heath Pearce, Charlie Chuck Wagon Davies, I'm Jimmy Cream Cheese Conrad. Say thank you for listening and watching once again, and we will see you on Thursday. Later.